Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of Monday, November 3rd through the 9th of 2025. All right, so this week we have a full moon, which is the halfway point of the lunar month. And so this will be on Wednesday. And so as we do approach Wednesday, we will be still building energy in the lunar cycle. Full moons are usually a time of the highest energy, but also where we often gain some new perspective on things and where we can then continue to develop that perspective for the remainder of the cycle. So usually new insights, new pivots, new direction changes, and all in all, more energy to be utilized there. So that's midweek on Wednesday. As we're approaching that, we still have Mars quite active. We had Mars very active last week as well. Mars is the planet of our assertiveness, our drive, our confidence. And so he's going to be in actually good support on Monday. He'll be trining up to Neptune, the planet of spirituality, and going with the flow a little bit. So maybe some nice receptivity there, but also opposite up to Uranus as we get into Tuesday. And Uranus can be a little erratic, although I don't think oppositions are often that challenging. It is good to balance that out. So if we're feeling like being rash, being impulsive, maybe throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, good to keep things nice and balanced and listen to that true self, but see if we can incorporate it constructively. We do have some sign changes this week along with that full moon on Wednesday. The sun will start to go into Libra. We're having a shift of focus. The full moon will be in Aries. And so it's all about this week balancing assertiveness with also balance and fairness and doing what's right in general. So that's going to be an emphasis there. And then Mars is going to change sign on Friday, going into more deeper Scorpio. And this is actually, believe it or not, a much more comfortable place for Mars as he does traditionally rule it. But we could get into that deeper energy with Mercury, and Venus is going to be squaring up to Pluto over the weekend too. So also deep energy to work with over the weekend and going into next week. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here's the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, November 3rd. And as you can see here, we are using the actual sky. You can see that the constellations are different sizes here. This is what we see in the visible sky, the actual true size of the constellations. And so this means that the signs do change. And so if you're noticing some of the changes, like maybe you're expecting me to say that the full moon was in Taurus instead of Aries, definitely check out that link down below for more information on using the visible sky called True Sidereal Astrology. And if you do like what you see here and you do want to use astrology software, we're using True Sky. There's a link down below for this as well. There's a free trial. Actually, there's a completely free version to use it, and it's extremely easy to use. So you can just click any of the planets, for example, and get full interpretations. As you can see, you can do that for the week. You can also do that for your own natal chart. Pretty much any chart you want to cast in here, you can have all the information. It's very easy to use. So information down there in the description for that free version. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look here at just this week as a whole real quick. We have the full moon on Wednesday. We're going to be building momentum as we approach that. That's going to be in Aries here, which is really about incorporating a little bit more of this assertive energy, which has already been quite strong, but really doing a status check with a lot of this. But still maintaining the balance, as all full moons are about balance, but with the sun shifting into Libra, really starting the Libra season of incorporating a little bit more balance into our life in general. The fact that Mars is also changing sign this week, hence towards a shifting of energy shifts. And don't forget too, as we've mentioned, Mercury will be going retrograde early next week on Monday. And so things are coming up to their tri-yearly reflection with Mercury. Every 3 times a year we have the Mercury retrograde, which is a good time to go back, redo things, reflect on some things, make sure things are reworked and all that good stuff there. So this is last week before Mercury goes retrograde as well. So that's the sort of big picture there. Let's go ahead and break this down one day at a time, starting first with Monday. So here's the chart for Monday, November 3rd. The moon will be in Pisces, and this will be in the first half of Tuesday as well. Pisces is all about having more receptivity and peace in our lives. This is where the last full moon was, and where we've had a lot of energy, as you can see here. Not only with all these planets here, but these recent lunar cycles. And so maybe incorporating what we've learned these past months about receptivity. So receptivity here meaning to, connect to the essence of life. This is where we find peace. This is where we find spirituality. This is where we find God, whatever your perspective is. But it is where we connect to the fundamental building blocks of life. And in this way, having a more receiving approach to things, right? Maybe willing to flow a little bit with the unfoldments of life, willing to accept things for how they are, maybe having some gratitude, maybe just having a little more peace and soul fulfillment in our life. So this could be a good way of working with the very early part of the week, and something that we've already had coming into the week from this previous Sunday. Now, with that being said, though, like I said, it is definitely a week, as last week was, centered around Mars, which is more of the assertive and direct types of energy. But Mars is in good harmony to that spiritual kind of energy. As you can see here, Mars is trining up to Neptune, and Neptune is the planet of spirituality, is the planet of that Pisces. And so it's nice to see that assertive nature is in good harmony with that receptive nature that we have early in the week here. So nice to see that. So we could be maybe a bit compassionate, a bit understanding, a bit willing to, again, not push so hard and to flow with where the currents of life are going. And of course, anything that does center around the more spiritual or receptive side of things could be great. And again, in an assertive way, maybe some exercise can be meditative, maybe working out, maybe Tai Chi, maybe something more, so things that do combine the fire with the water, the action with the receptive. Very supportive this week, this early part of the week. Then on Tuesday, Mars will be opposing up to Uranus. And so this is all really part of this kite formation that we've already had with Mars since last week. And here we come to one of the challenges with it. Now, I personally view oppositions more neutral, more like conjunctions. Yes, they require balance, and yes, there can be often a tendency to go to imbalances. So with this, collectively speaking, there might be an impulse to be rash, be impulsive, feel like we need to break free from something, which can sometimes be a bottlenecking or a charging up of energy, which can be a bit much. So if we're feeling that, it's important to listen to that part that wants that freedom or wants that change. That's very important. But with that mindfulness, right? And that's what the opposition really does. In fact, it is the halfway point between the Mars and Uranus cycle, which we could say generally started about a year and a half ago. And we're coming up to the halfway point of that. And it's really about incorporating more freedom in our life and having a little more of this listening to our excitement. So great to do that. But again, with mindfulness, and maybe there's some things that can come into the mix that can help us become very aware of how to have that freedom, how to have that excitement in our life in constructive ways, right? And we can notice some important shifts this week, most certainly, not only because of this opposition, but of course also because we have that full moon coming up just a day later here on Wednesday, which is very much a shifting time as well. These oppositions, these full moons are the halfway points of these very large cycles here. In this case, multi-year cycle, but also the monthly cycle. So anyways, Wednesday full moon, that's going to be in Aries. That is Mars's sign. It's illuminating the assertive, direct, independent energies of life. Great time to now do a status check with these things. How is your assertive side? How are you being proactive or initiating things in your life? What is it that you need? Who are you and what do you want? And of course, that should always be an open-ended question in the sense that it's always changing and it's good to continuously be open to changes and exploring that. But a great time to do a status check on these types of things. Aries is the first sign of the Zodiac. And so we could say that we're halfway through the zodiacal year. And so maybe also reflecting on the past 6 months. What's been going on the past 6 months with this stuff, new goals, new initiatives, new things you've started, that maybe you can really do a status check with. And that status check can really help you make some important shifts and changes for the remainder of the cycle. And this is, again, both the monthly cycle, the next 2 weeks, but also the yearly cycle as well. So status check, specifically around the fiery side of things and self-oriented side of things. The full moon does not have any major aspects to it, so I think it's going to be a little more, let's say, calm or not as deep as maybe some other one might be, with some, particularly if there were any harsh or difficult aspects with it. So all in all, I think just a great time to, again, see what comes up and make a pivot. Maybe nothing major right now, but make a pivot. And of course, keep in mind that with the Mercury retrograde, just to be very flexible in the process at the moment. All right, so that's midweek there. Now, as we do get into Thursday, again, Mars very active this week. In this case, this is a more minor thing, but sextiling Pluto. Pluto is the ruler of the underworld, the deeper world. And so it's nice to see that assertive energy and good harmony with that. This is very minor in the sense that we can choose or choose not to work with it. But if we do choose to work with it, this can actually be a very empowering energy to work with. Being willing to dive deep, being willing to express ourselves or take those actions, maybe in the face of some fears or in the face of some inhibitions that we would otherwise not. There's certainly some doors available for walking through those doors in that way. So nice to see that. And this really gives us now a prelude into the deeper energies that we have coming up. Now, Mercury is already in Scorpio, and it is where he's, of course, about to go retrograde. So we've already had the deeper mind recently, since last week, a deeper communication, maybe more direct, maybe more candid, more real, more raw way of thinking and communicating things. And that's awesome. And that's something that we will be going through a reflection process with. But Mars is going to then enter into Scorpio as we get into the weekend, as we approach Friday. And this really adds to that. Now, this is one of Mars's traditional signs. Up until we discovered Pluto, we associated Scorpio with Mars. Mars is what I call Mars's shadow is Scorpio. And in fact, the Vedic astrologers only use the traditional. And so in this case, Mars ruling it. So Mars going into one of his home signs. And so more comfortable there. Mars wants to dive deep. Mars wants to get to the point. Mars wants to assert and take action in a way that's authentic, real, and raw. And so we're starting to get into that energy this week, and this will be an energy we'll certainly be working with the weeks to come, especially once the Sun and Venus enter here as well, and then after Mercury's retrograde going back in. So we'll have a lot of that Scorpio energy, and it's already been, like I said, since Mercury last week, but we have a lot more energy building into that. And so that's going into this weekend. What's nice is that while that's going on, the moon will be in Taurus this weekend, approaching the weekend, Thursday and Friday, particularly in the first part of Saturday. The moon will be in Taurus, and this grounds out the deeper energy. It's opposite Scorpio. So it could actually be, as we're getting into the deeper world, a good time to be steady, be grounded, maybe connect to nature or the natural elements of life, to cultivate things like self-reliance and self-worth and our inner strength in order to be willing to dive deep with things. So nice opposition there with the moon to help balance out some of that Scorpionic type of stuff. Now, continuing with the fact that it's a Scorpionic or deeper weekend, we do have Venus squaring up to Pluto. That's going to be both Saturday and Sunday, peaking around late Saturday, early Sunday for most of us. And this is a challenging energy, but also can be very constructive, as all squares really are. Squares are about building things and making things happen. So here, being willing to dive deep, but particularly in the context of our connections. Venus rules all of our connections in life, whether we're connecting to others, whether we're connecting to life, what we enjoy in life, what we want to connect to. And so, again, maybe difficult. There could be with this, maybe that natural tendency to pull up the walls, maybe wear that armor, maybe hide away, maybe pierce, or be too strong with the wanting to get deep. So being conscious of it, constructive of it, but intentionally, it's a great time to be willing to let down those walls in the appropriate situations where there's actual trust or deeper connection. But at the same time, to be willing to bring up those walls when boundaries are needed and when there needs to be that protection. So being aware of this and working with it constructively, but as a result, real depth, real deeper connection, right, to things and people in life. And so great opportunity here for that raw, deeper connection with that intention to do it constructively, maybe learn some of these lessons, to go through some of these experiences with mindfulness that this Venus square is all about. All right, so that's the weekend there. And like I said, the moon will be in Gemini, so leaving Taurus, entering Gemini late Saturday, all day Sunday. This is centered around communication and learning, so it could actually be quite an inquisitive and curious weekend. But this is Mercury's sign, and where Mercury's about to go retrograde. So maybe utilizing this as a good way to set the stage for the rethinking and relearning that is coming up, that we'll talk more about next week. All right, everyone, so that's the week in a nutshell. Put simply here, it's a full moon week, and so as we approach Wednesday, it is the building of the lunar cycle to what's usually an awareness, and shifts and changes based on that. This can mean both monthly and also yearly, especially being that it's Aries and it's the zodiacal halfway point of the year. Mars is very active this week, as he was last week, mostly because of the kite formation that he's been forming. But here, supportive with Neptune, maybe quite receptive, quite willing to go with the flow a little bit, but balancing out any willingness to break free and make some changes, right? So to listen to excitement, but make sure that's all done constructively. Towards the second half of the week, we have a much deeper energy to work with, and that's setting the stage for many weeks to come. So willingness to dive deep in constructive ways, and with the square to Venus, particularly Saturday and Sunday with our connections. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click the like button if you're watching this on YouTube, and do stay tuned for the live stream that we have here every Sunday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time with Anna Maria. There's a link down below in the description for that. You can also sign up on the YouTube page, or you can also sign up to our newsletter, MTZ Insiders, which is absolutely free. We do get updates like this, as well as other updates sent directly to your inbox. So all information down below, but hope to see you there at the live stream, and have a great week, everyone. And I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.